Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our series on the 100 Heroes of Islam. Today, inshallah, we're going to talk to you about a great scholar of Islam, and it's a scholar of Islam that had amazing perseverance. He went through amazing trials and tribulations, lots of hard work, lots of difficulty, lots of sabr for the sake of Allah, lots of humility. Despite that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mashallah, tabarakallah, made this scholar one of the 4 great scholars that the ummah all wants to follow, and also made this scholar, mashallah, the Imam of the people of this dunya. And many of the scholars said that when he died, on the day that he died, people considered him the Imam of the Ahl al-Ard, as they used to say. They said people, he was the Imam of every person on this dunya. Who is this person? How can be so illustrious? Who is this person? This person is nothing but Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah, rahmatan wasi'ah. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal was a young man that was born in Iraq, and he grew up in a house of knowledge. And alhamdulillah, when he studied, he began to gain as much knowledge as he can. He had amazing friends who were also scholars of Islam. And alhamdulillah, he studied from, if not thousands of scholars of Islam, at least hundreds of them. And alhamdulillah, many of them became his primary mashayikh. And he is also known as the teacher of many of the great scholars of Islam, like Al-Bukhari. We know that Bukhari was one of his students. We know that Imam Muslim was his student. Many of them were actually the students of Imam Ahmad al-Hanbal. And his friend was Imam al-Shafi'i, and many others. The great scholars were actually his friends. So Imam Ahmad al-Hanbal was an exceptional human being. He had memorized 1 million hadith. Abu Zur'a said to Abdullah, the son of Imam Ahmad al-Hanbal, he said, your father has memorized alf hadith, meaning 1,000, which is like 1,000,000 hadith. And in one authentic narration, he said, I revised with your father 1 million hadith from his memory. This is how much Imam Ahmad had memorized. This is not to mention how many he actually knew, but what he had just memorized was 1 million hadith. Can you imagine that? How many hadith have you memorized? How many have you memorized? Have you even memorized Innamal a'malu bin niyat properly? Have you memorized Al-halalu bayyin wal-haramu bayyin? Have you memorized, Man ahdatha fi amrina ma laysa minhu fahuwa rad? Which hadith have you memorized? And how many have you memorized? If a scholar can memorize a thousand, meaning 1 million hadith, then where are we from him? So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah showed us the way. He showed us that this religion needs amazing level of hard work. And if you do that, then you become from the people who are imams of this dunya. And by imam, please don't misunderstand. I'm not talking about imam of a masjid. I'm talking about leaders, true leaders. And true leaders are not the prime ministers or presidents of countries. The true leaders are actually the imams who guide us to Allah's way, and that is what true leadership is all about. Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal rahimahullah was a scholar of Islam who went through amazing persecution. So there were some really bad people that ruled at that time. The Khalifa at that time wanted them to say, I wanted the scholars of Islam to claim that the Quran is not eternal. He wanted them to say that, the Quran is not eternal. The Quran is like anything else. It's like a book. It didn't exist, then it began to exist. And this is what the Khalifa tried to do. Listening to a group called the Mu'tazila at that time, he wanted them to believe that the Quran was not created. Now, why make a big deal of this point, the Quran created, not created? Because really, if the Quran is from Allah and these are His words, if you say it's created, that means God was also created. If God was created, then who created Him, So it creates doubts in the head. And that's why the scholars of Islam all agree that the Quran is not created. It is the uncreated word of Allah. Meaning, just like Allah, no one gave birth to Him. Allah existed and will forever exist. He never has a beginning, nor will He have an end. And in the same way, the Quran never had a beginning, nor will it have an end. Yes, you're right. The books in which the Quran is printed now, the Mus'haf is created, the paper is created, but the words are not created, right? The words are not created. And yes, you saying the statements of the Quran, that's created because you are created yourself, But the Quran itself, the words itself are Allah's, and Allah is not created, and therefore the Quran is not created. The Quran existed for all times and will continue to exist for all times. And as a result, ya ikhwati, my brothers, my sisters in Islam, the Quran is something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent on this earth to be an eternal word of His that is recited beyond the day of judgment. It is preserved in the Lawh al-Mahfuz and sent down to the Prophet on the night of Laylatul Qadr. And that is then came down piecemeal over 23 years from the lowest heavens, from Bayt al-Izzah, came down to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam over the span of 23 years. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, what lesson can we gain from this man? What can we learn from his life? Imam Ahmad rahimahullah went through a lot of persecution. The Khalifa at that time tried to punish him, tried to hurt him, tried to harm him, and he persevered. He was the only scholar, along with his friend Nuh, another great scholar, and these two people were the only scholars who did not give up. One of them, Mr. Nuh, was killed, and here Imam Ahmad bin Hanbal was unfortunately punished a lot, very badly, beaten, bones broken, etc. But he never ever gave up believing in Allah and believing that the Quran is the uncreated word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what do we learn from this? Well, we learn from this that if you truly believe in Allah, then ultimately Allah's test is going to come to you. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to hurt you and who are going to try to harm you. In fact, Allah tells us of that. He gives us a prior warning. He tells us in Surah Al-Fatiha, He says, إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Only you we worship and only you we seek help from. And the scholars of Islam said, why do we say إِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ right after إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ? Why do we say we seek your help only before only you that we worship, or right after it? The answer is because when you worship only one God, when you worship only Allah, then people will try to hurt you and harm you. Shaitan will try to hurt and harm you. He will bring the armies of the world to try to hurt and harm you. And as a result, oh Allah, we seek your help to defend us when we worship only one God. And that is why, my brothers, my sisters in Islam, it is very, very critical that you remember that because you're trying to be good Muslimin, a day will come when you will also be hurt and harmed. A day will come when people will try to hurt and harm you. But as long as you know Allah, as long as you know that Allah exists and He is your friend and He is your protector, ni'mal mawla wa ni'mal nasir. And that is why when they were killing Umar al-Mukhtar, this lion of the desert, do you know what Umar al-Mukhtar said? He said, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. That's what he said. So we are from Allah, to Him is our return. Courage, bravery, perseverance in the eye of the storm. That is what Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal had. When they kept on saying, and they were lashing Imam Ahmad and they were hurting Imam Ahmad, and they were saying, say that the Quran is created, say what the Quran is. You know what he said? He said, show me one evidence that the Quran is created, one evidence only, and I will say it. Show me one evidence that the Quran is created, I will believe you, and I will then say it. But if you cannot, then I will not change. It shows conviction. It shows that people have belief. It shows that when you believe in something, you don't just sell yourself just because someone might hurt you and harm you. You don't give up. I mean, let me give an example. If someone pins you to the ground, beats you up and says, you know what, say that there is more than one God, would you say it? No. Even if they beat you up, you shouldn't. You should hold on to it. Of course, if out of tremendous pain, if you end up saying it by mistake, Allah will forgive you. But you have to hold on. You have to try your level best to hold on. That's what Imam Ahmad taught us. Perseverance, persevering in the cause of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And then hard work in gaining knowledge. You've got to gain knowledge and you've got to internalize knowledge. Don't say to me that, you know what, it's in the books. If it's in the books, then what's the difference between you having books and the donkey carrying scriptures on its back? No difference at all. You are a glorified donkey in that case. You're just a researcher. You know where to get the knowledge, but you don't have the knowledge in the heart. You have to try your level best to bring the knowledge in your heart. Therefore, when you read something, try to memorize it. When you read the Quran, memorize it. That's why we are asking all our students and our teachers to try to memorize the Quran as much as possible so that they internalize the knowledge. It's in the hearts. Knowledge is preserved in the hearts of mankind. Knowledge is not preserved in the books. That is why we may have more books today, but we have less knowledge, simply because of the fact that, you know what, we don't try to internalize that knowledge and keep it in our hearts. Imam Ahmad taught us that million hadith, and on top of that, he became an Imam because he was punished in the path of Allah. So the third lesson I have for you, first is hard work in gaining knowledge. Number two is perseverance in the eye of the storm, being steadfast, being staunch in the eye of the storm. The third thing we learn from the life of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah is that Imam Ahmad tried his level best to practice that knowledge. He tried his level best. One thing that is very evident is that a scholar is only as good as what he practices. Some of the pious predecessors, they said in an amazing narration, they said that a scholar does not cease to be ignorant with his knowledge until he practices with that knowledge. And one of the scholars said the only definition of a true scholar is the one who practices the knowledge that he preaches. Imam Ahmad used to do that. It was reported about the life of Imam Ahmad that once he went for Hajj, and when he went for Hajj, he had his head shaved as you normally shave your head during Hajj, and then he gave a gold coin to the person who had shaved his head. So they said, hey, why are you paying a gold coin when the price is only a silver coin? And we know gold is more expensive than silver, 10 times more expensive. And so why are you paying a gold coin when the price is silver coin? He said, I read the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that after he had his head shaved, after his Hajj, the Prophet ﷺ gave the barber one gold piece, and I did not want to ever die except that I have acted according to every hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that I know of. And this is what we should try and do. How many pieces of knowledge do we have? Do we truly preserve it? We should try to preserve it, internalize it. This is also what I used to do when I used to gain knowledge with my teachers. I used to try to implement everything that I did. Even I remember reading about the hadith of the Prophet where the Prophet had a ring. He used to put the ring on his left hand, in his left ring finger or his left little finger, and it was made of silver. I remember right after the class, I went off to the gold and the silver shops in Medina, and I had a little ring made of silver, made up because I wanted to implement the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And this is what Imam Ahmad did even once in his life, so that he does not come to Allah and Allah asks him, what did you do with the knowledge? Except that he says, I implemented it. These are your lessons today, and I hope that inshallah ta'ala you internalize this, you really think about it, and you think about what great scholars like Imam Ahmad mean to us and to our lives. And perhaps one day we'll be tested, but the real challenge is, are we going to persevere like Imam Ahmad persevered? Thank you once again. I'll see you next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.